As a major research institution, Arizona State University offers the most online bachelor's degree programs, along with world-class faculty and dedicated support. Discover why ASU is ranked #1 in innovation for 9 consecutive years. Tap to learn more.
Your plans? Today it's dinner with the parents at your spot.
We gotta come back here.
Now, their spot. Or you're on the edge of your seat at the game.
Come on, just one time.
And it's the one.
Woo-hoo!
Or maybe you're catching the next flight to...
Now boarding flight 1850.
Oh, that's you. The choice is yours. And when you're with Amex, it's not if it's going to happen, but when. American Express. Don't live life without it.
Hey, it's Christine with Storyworthy. Today on the show, we take a look back at 2021 and 4 stories you'll never forget. The first is from actress Mollie Heckerling.
We're talking about Gilbert Gottfried because, you can't cancel Gilbert because the beauty of Gilbert is that it's not even about the thing that he's making fun of. It's that you don't want him to make fun of it, so he has to.
The next story is from broadcaster Steve Mason.
And it was a promotion called Buried Alive. He explained it to me like this. I am going to hypnotize you. Then we're going to literally bury you in a coffin 6 feet under the earth for 48 hours.
Next, we hear a dramatic and tense story by comedian Chris Gethard.
And I hand this knife to this guy, George. And when I put this knife in his hand, he looked down at it with the demeanor of an alcoholic who has just had a shot placed in front of him.
And finally, we listen to Jackie the Joke Man Martling talk about going to Las Vegas with Rodney Dangerfield.
Walk along Las Vegas Boulevard South. We're just about to the lead. He says, "You got to take a leak?" And instead of going into the lead, into the bathroom like a couple of human beings, we walked behind the lead where the dumpsters are.
Today on the show, we take a look at the best of 2021. Stay close.
Hey, my name is Mollie Heckerling.
Hey, my name is Steve Mason.
Hi, my name's Chris Gethard.
Hey, I'm Jackie Martling, and you are listening to Storyworthy.
Welcome to Storyworthy. My name is Christine Blackburn, and I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, California. Whether you're a longtime fan of the show or a new listener, welcome to Storyworthy. Now, I hope you guys had a chance to listen to writer, producer, and director Brian Volk-Weiss last week. Now, Brian talked all about toys, which was appropriate for Christmas week. And Brian is such an interesting person. He's created several television shows. And last week we talked about A Toy Story Near You, which is a show about toy stores in all different parts of the country. It's very cool. So go back, you guys. Listen to Brian Volk-Weiss talk about, well, he talks all about, production. He talks about how he created these shows. He's just really interesting. And especially if you're a Hollywood insider kind of person, it's a great show to listen to. But not today. Today, you guys are here on a really special episode of Storyworthy. It's the best of 2021, where I have hand-selected 4 of my favorite shows from 2021, and you're going to hear those stories today. And it was not easy coming up with these favorites. I could easily have chosen 20 stories, but I did narrow it down, and we're going to start those stories in just a second. But before we do, I wanted to remind you to follow Storyworthy and Story Smash on social media at Storyworthy and at Story Smash, because on Instagram, Story Smash, I've got a lot of great photos. And Story Smash is back at the Hollywood Improv on Saturday, January 22nd, 2022. So 1/22/22 at 7 p.m. Tickets are available right now. Come on down and watch us play Story Smash. It's the funniest goddamn show that's not on television. And if you haven't joined my mailing list yet, I encourage you to head over to storyworthypodcast.com and join my mailing list. I shoot you out 1 email a week, and we can keep in contact that way. It's nice, right? Yes. All right, you guys, first up today and the best of 2021 is actress and musician Mollie Heckerling. Now, Mollie, she's such a funny girl. She lives in New York City, and her mother is Amy Heckerling. And you may remember her from, writing and directing movies like Clueless and Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And Mollie is an actress herself. She's super funny. You can find her over there on Twitter at Mollie Schmolly. All right, you guys, put your hands together for Mollie Heckerling.
My story is about my babysitter growing up. Her name was Barbara. She was crazy, and she looked exactly like Howard Stern. She was the kind of woman who would go into a restaurant and pick a fight with anybody, and, just would say anything because she had to say what she thought. She couldn't just not say anything, even if it was blunt and hurt your feelings. So she was a fun person to grow up with, very immature, very funny. But she had this tragic background because her parents were Holocaust survivors. And she would tell people when she met them a lot that her parents were Holocaust survivors because it was a big part of who she was. But I also think on some level she was accustomed to the sympathy a little bit where, everyone would, feel so bad for her and, it was like an immediate sort of bonding thing that, she had to sort of relate to people and feel like, she had their sympathy. But my mom was friends with Gilbert Gottfried, and she made the mistake of trying to turn to him for sympathy. And it was the worst call she ever made. What happened was Gilbert was in town and he wanted to hang out with my mom. And Gilbert, I love him to death. But he is the cheapest human being on the face of the earth. He is so cheap that when he got appendicitis, he waited for his appendix to burst because he was too cheap to call an ambulance. So he calls my mom up one night and he says, "What are you doing?" She goes, "I'm making dinner." He goes, "Oh yeah, what are we having?" She goes, "Do you want to come over?" So he wants to come over, but he doesn't want to pay for a cab. So she sends my babysitter to go to his hotel and pick him up. So I guess this is when it all started. I wasn't in the car with them, but I guess what happened was they're in the car. She starts making conversation. She tells him.
How old is the babysitter, by the way?
She was 45.
And her parents were still alive then, or
her mother
passed?
was still alive. Her parents survived the Holocaust.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, her parents survived the Holocaust. Her mother was still alive, but her father died in a car accident with her little sister years later. So, I mean, just sort of like a, not a horrible, happy family background. Yeah. So she's telling Gilbert her background and the Holocaust story. And I guess he starts up in the car, like making jokes and, being an idiot. So that by the time they get back to the house, she's already upset. And he just kept going all night long. Just like, he ate whatever my mom gave him. He licked the plate. He said, "I guess your parents didn't eat this good in Treblinka." Like, "Oh, I've been meaning to lose some weight. Can you tell me how your parents did it?" Like, all just sort of like, we're talking about Gilbert Gottfried because like, you can't cancel Gilbert because the beauty of Gilbert is that it's not even about the thing that he's making fun of. It's that you don't want him to make fun of it. So he has to, like the way that he got fired from Aflac for making all those jokes after the tsunami in Japan. You know what I mean? Like, it's a compulsive thing that he has to do. It's his superpower that he just like has to do this. So Barbara was, really upset. And she
wait, did you guys sit down to have dinner? Did everybody sit down?
We're like sitting at the kitchen counter. I mean, we've never been like a formal sit down dinner type of family. We're slobs, like my, like you can take the girl out of the Bronx, but you can't take the Bronx out of the girl. That's my mom. So, we're just all sitting around the kitchen. He's eating. We're watching him. like making these awful jokes. Barbara threatened to quit. my mom gave her more money and she, you know, didn't quit, and we all apologized. You know, she was upset that, you know, my mom was like laughing at the jokes, but it's like, you know, she had to explain, it's like, it's because it's Gilbert. It's not because, you know, it's because he's insane. I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't think that that's a valid excuse and would still think it's reprehensible, but you know, they're probably also not comedians. So
exactly.
So what happened was Barbara was a really huge fan of Howard Stern. Like she looked just like him and she loved him and she listened to him every morning, and she knew that Howard Stern was friends with Gilbert. So she calls into the show one morning telling them this story, and they put her on the air. And then they got Gilbert. They like, you know, woke him up or whatever time it is that they record the show, like 6 a.m. They call him early in the morning, wake him up. They're like, we have this woman on the phone saying that you made fun of the Holocaust, and, you know, she's all pissed off. And, you know, she works for Amy Heckerling, and they proceeded to argue on the air. And it was so funny because the whole time they were just ripping on each other, and Barbara loved a good fight. Like, this was the thing about her. Like, you couldn't take her to a sizzler without like her getting into a screaming match with somebody for God knows what, using a toothpick, anything that just like rubbed her the wrong way. So this was like sparring for her. Like, I think she really enjoyed being on Howard Stern with Gilbert, like telling him he had a small dick, and, you know, Howard saying, if you had to sleep with a Gilbert or a Nazi, and she says a Nazi, and Gilbert's like, oh yeah, because they could give you more bread. Like, it was just, and they did this, I guess it was like such a ratings darling that they had them on for like 3 separate episodes of just them fighting about, you know, him being a schlub and how she thinks Ron Zimmerman is sexier than he is, and like all just random shit. And all these episodes are on YouTube now, and they're labeled, oh my gosh, they're labeled Gilbert versus the German woman or Gilbert versus the Heckerlings. And he even started making jokes about me on the air because I was like 9 years old at the time. And he's like, oh yeah, Molly, she's hot. Do you get to give her sponge baths? Like, what's that like? So he calls the house one day. And I was like, what'd you say? Oh wait, no, I should go back. So Barbara and I also used to crank call him a lot after this whole incident. We'd leave him nasty messages telling him that he'd like wipe his ass with toilet paper and then save it because he was too cheap to buy a new roll. Or just like, that was like my stupid 10-year-old insult. Like, we just left him all these nasty messages. And when he called the house one day, I was like, what'd you say about me on the Stern show? And he goes, I said you had a big hairy cunt. And then he hung up on me. So yeah, all those episodes of them fighting are just on YouTube, where it's like, you know, she's telling him he's not funny, and, you know, it's just him like being a creep and making jokes about the Holocaust, and, you know, Howard and Robin just laughing the whole time. So that was my Gilbert Gottfried story, and also just my sort of way of keeping Barbara's memory alive, because she tragically killed herself when I was about 16 years old. She OD'd on Ativan, which is not uncommon. I mean, it's an epidemic. Lots of people overdose on opioids. And I remember, I think my mom saw Gilbert, and he asked how she was, and she told him that she killed herself. And Gilbert, you know, someone who always has a joke to say at the most inappropriate time, like, he didn't say anything. He was just like, oh, fuck. So I think that, you know, in his own way.
It wasn't an accident?
No, it wasn't an accident. I don't think so. She was, you know, she was at a weird crossroads.
Her mother had passed, though, right?
No, I'm not sure. I think her mother might have still been alive. And that's the sad thing, is I've lost touch with her family, and I wish I still knew where they were. Her sister Laura wrote a very famous book about their childhood in Germany. But I think it was called We Should Have Had Dogs, because that's what her parents used to say to them. Because, you know, a lot of Holocaust survivors were traumatized and were abusive to their kids.
I didn't know that, actually. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. So her parents were kind of abusive and used to look at her and her sister and say, we should have had dogs. And I think that's what she called the book, but I can't find the book or the author to try to track her family down.
Really sad.
I know.
How did your mom become friends with her to begin with? And was she a live-in babysitter?
She wasn't a live-in. I don't know where my mom found her. I assume through an agency. And I remember it was my birthday the first night I met her. My parents were going to a benefit. I was hysterical because I didn't want them to leave. I see this woman who looks like Howard Stern and I'm just losing my shit.
I was funny what you remember.
And I was in a huff. So I remember putting on my big little crinoline ball gown and sitting in my room watching The Sound of Music. And she came in and was like, oh, this is my favorite movie. So then I was like, okay, you're cool. We can be friends. But I just thought it was so funny because she was just such a live wire that, to go from being mad at Gilbert for saying all this stuff to arguing with him on Howard Stern and
That's
just
awesome.
Sparring with him. Yeah, I think she had a really good time because she loved Howard and Gilbert. Oh my God, Gilbert was so funny. He was like, do you hear yourself? You're using your parents in the Holocaust as an excuse to get on Howard Stern. And she was like, then it was for a good cause because I got to talk to Howard. I love you, Howard.
Okay, was that a funny story or what? Anything about Gilbert Gottfried makes me laugh because that guy is so wild. Don't forget, you guys, to follow Mollie on Twitter at Mollie Schmollie. She's just a great girl. All right, you guys, next up is broadcaster Steve Mason. Now, Steve Mason has a terrific story about being buried alive. And he truly was buried alive. And, he's going to share the story with you, but basically he was a disc jockey and it was like a stunt. But he did it. And it is crazy. You guys can hear all things Steve Mason over on his show, Mason in Ireland. It's a weekday show on ESPN. You can also hear Steve here in Los Angeles on AM 710 radio. All right, you guys, enjoy this story from Steve Mason.
So my story is called Buried Alive. And it's everybody's worst nightmare. It's like the thing that you have as a nightmare sometimes. People will literally think they're, in a coffin under the ground. So I was an FM morning DJ in Toledo. That was my first big part of my career. And I worked for a station called 93Q WRQN, or as I would say, as I sounded like back then, 93Q WRQN. The DJ voice. And at that point in history, this would have been about 1990. The Toledo public schools were having a budget crisis. And they announced that they were going to have to get rid of all of the athletic programs, football and basketball and all of the team sports and individual sports at the high school level. And so I was looking for a way to help to save that. And as a prominent guy in Toledo and as a guy who, had the number one show in the city. And at the same time, a guy came along who said, I have a promotional opportunity. And he had done it a couple of other times. And it was a promotion called Buried Alive. And at first I was unbelievably hesitant because of all the nightmares and because of, this is everybody's worst fear. And he explained it to me like this. I am going to hypnotize you. Then we're going to literally bury you in a coffin 6 feet under the earth. And we're going to do that for 48 hours. And I said, that's crazy. There's no possible way I'm going to do that. That seems like I would never survive it. And ultimately, I kind of put everything together. Toledo Public Schools needed money to save the athletic programs. This opportunity. Yeah, I guess it's an opportunity to be buried alive. And I decided I was going to dive into this full on. And the idea was that while I was buried alive, I would be raising money to save the Toledo Public Schools athletic programs. And it was very specific the way it was done. So there was a coffin. First of all, I was hypnotized. And that was, he said, the key to this whole thing was to be hypnotized. And for 48 hours in advance of the start of this, I couldn't eat or drink anything. So I went 48 hours without water, without food, without anything, because there was no way to relieve yourself in a coffin underground. They put me into this coffin.
Oh, God.
They nailed it shut. There was a hole in it. There was a hole in it right over my face. Okay. So I could still see daylight. They lowered me into the ground and covered it completely with dirt, except there was this tube that ran from sort of my face up to the sky so I could actually get air and breathe. And there was a camera inside of the coffin. And so for 24 hours, I was buried in this coffin with air, no food, no water, and a camera on me at all times. And people for the next 2 days showed up and gave money to help the Toledo Public Schools save their sports programs. And it was probably the toughest thing I've ever done. I've done lots of dumb things. I've lived on a billboard, and I've done all the sort of FM DJ sorts of things when I was coming up, skydiving with a microphone on and all that stuff. But this was really, really hard. And at the beginning, I thought, okay, I think I'm going to be okay. I think I'm going to be able to get through this. And by the second night, and people are showing up and they can see me on a monitor. They can see what it looks like inside the coffin, and they can see me slowly getting more and more agitated and terrified and closed in and claustrophobic. And finally, I got to the second night of this, and I said, you know what? I don't think I'm going to make it unless you send down a bottle of NyQuil, because I needed to just knock myself out. And so they dropped a bottle of NyQuil down the tube, and I chugged that for the second night. And keep in mind, I was on the air this whole time. I was also I was doing a morning show. I was doing every hour. I would be on the radio saying, hey, come on out, give some money. And so I was broadcasting from down there too. So that bottle of NyQuil is what saved me. That bottle of NyQuil is what knocked me out for that second night, and I was able to survive the night. Being on the air helped, actually talking on the air and talking to people in my head over my headphones helped me to get through it. But ultimately, I did survive it. And I've got to tell you, when they dug me up, and, you know, my family was there and my parents were there, and there were 10,000 people there cheering, or some number of people cheering. And it was the strangest feeling. I felt so appreciative of life. I felt so appreciative of the ability to move, the ability to see what was going on in the world. That 48 hours was such a dark and strange and weird period. I would never, ever do this again, never do it again. And I would never advise anybody to do it. David Blaine has done this. Years later, years afterwards, David Blaine was buried alive for 2 days. And I would always think, 2 days, that's nothing, David Blaine. I already did this years ago. But we raised $100,000. And we saved all of the athletic programs in the Toledo Public Schools because I was buried alive. And so that is my story of being buried alive.
How crazy is that, right? Like, I would never, for any amount of money, do what he did. And when he said they put him in the coffin, I audibly gasped. I mean, that is just too crazy. But what a great story. So thank you, Steve Mason, All right, you guys, the next story up is from comedian and writer Chris Gethard. Now, Chris shares a story about living in New York City and he and his wife having their son. And it's the first year, like the first Christmas for the family. And Chris goes out to get a Christmas tree with his son. And this guy comes back to the apartment to help him set it up. And that's where things get a little crazy. And I think after you hear this story, you'll know why I chose Chris Gethard's story to be one of the best of from 2021, because it is truly the night that Chris Gethard learned that he could kill a man. All right, you guys, enjoy this story from Chris Gethard.
So we mentioned that my son was born in April of 2019, and I learned that I could kill another human being in December of 2019. It's, it's the type of thing that you always wonder about. You watch movies where people are just like killing each other. I'm like, I wonder if I had to, if I would have what it takes. And I had a moment where I knew I might have to, and I will. And I'm not even overthinking it. I'm not even feeling bad. I lived in New York City for 16 years. And in New York City, I think everybody knows there's like a trope, right? There's the trope of the Christmas tree sales. And I think anybody who's ever watched like a Christmas movie set in New York knows exactly what I'm talking about, let alone if you've been through New York, which is there's these people and a lot of them just come down from Canada. And these Canadian guys, they sleep in a van for a few weeks next to the trees. And that's where you go and you buy your Christmas trees. That's how New Yorkers get Christmas trees, from like itinerant Canadians who live in vans. That's true. And you can look it up. That's who most of these people are. And I've been doing that ever since I got together with my wife. My wife loves a Christmas tree. She loves a real Christmas tree. I grew up with an artificial Christmas tree. And then when I was a young man, me and my like slovenly roommates, we weren't running out getting Christmas trees, but my wife, every year we got the Christmas tree. And this means I would get the tree and we'd buy it. And, and it's charming. They cut the end and they put it in that weird orange net. And then I would sling it over my shoulders and we'd kind of schlep it back to wherever we were living at the time. And I'd be covered in pine needles and sap. And I think you can tell like it was a little bit of a pain. And in 2019, it was going to be an even bigger pain because we had a baby. So my wife we went out and we picked out our Christmas tree. And in New York too, it's one of those great things about New York, which is you can get almost anything if you just start walking. You just start walking in New York, you'll find what you're looking for. If whatever weird thing you want to buy a Razor scooter, just start walking. Somebody will be selling a Razor scooter. I lived in Queens. Like literally some store will be selling any random thing you can name if you walk far enough. And we had the baby in the stroller, and about 3 or 4 blocks from our house found a couple different little setups of people selling Christmas trees. And one of them had 2 magical words that I loved so much, which was free delivery.
Oh, yeah.
Because, every year we're doing this thing and my wife's helping me with the tree and I'm all cracked out by the end and tired. And then you got to set the thing up. And I'm sitting here going, free delivery. We got the stroller with us. We won't be covered in stuff. It's like, you have at that point, 5-6-month-old baby. It's like, you already have enough mess in your life, enough exhaustion. You don't need to be lugging a tree that's taller than you and then creating that mess too. So I walk up to the guy. I go, hey, free delivery, huh? He goes, yeah, if you live in the neighborhood. And I told him I lived about 3 blocks away, gave him the address. He said, yeah, that's in our free zone. So just tip our guy out. I said, cool. And we picked out our tree and they set it aside. And the guy said, okay, my guy George is out running deliveries right now, but when he gets back, here's the list, and 3rd or 4th on the list, he'll get to you. So just try to be home, make sure somebody's home for the next few hours. And I said, great. So we go home, and my wife decides to go to the gym. And I was very, very happy for that because, again, anybody who has a young child knows, like, you don't always get to do things for yourself. So when my wife was like, I really could just like go stretch out and move a little bit, I said, go, do it. Baby goes down for a nap. So I'm home alone. And the buzzer rings. hello? Guy's like, Christmas tree delivery. I go, cool. Elevators to the right, man. I was living pretty well at that point. I had an elevator building, no more walk up, grown up. And I go out in the hall, elevator door opens, and a cartoonish situation pours out of the elevator. This like put upon, stressed out, frazzled, like Michael Richards-esque character, like a Kramer-esque, just like lovable dope of a guy. Like he catches his toe on the way up the elevator and he kind of trips into the hallway and then he turns around to drag. They got the, in New York, they call them like the granny carts, like those stand-up shopping carts that'll usually like fold up flat and then they unfold. And people have those to go grocery shopping because when you're shopping on the city blocks, like you don't have shopping carts. You're not loading things in your car. So he's got the Christmas tree crammed into one of the granny carts and he goes to pull that off the elevator and the tree is too wide and he's like cartoonish, like struggling noises. And then he finally gets the thing into the hallway, but it has jammed itself through the wiring of the granny cart. So the trunk of the tree is really crammed in there. And he's like standing on the edge of his own granny cart, like trying to hoist the tree out, like, and I'm feeling bad. He's like, no, I got it, man. I got it. And I don't want to be disrespectful because this is what he does. But then I finally am down kind of like lifting the tree from the bottom and he's yanking from the top and just like, oh boy, we almost got it. Like he's like one of these guys who's just like, he's just like a train wreck in a lovable way, but in a way where you're going, buddy, how do you make it through the day? So we finally get the tree out. He's like, hi, I'm Georgie. It's nice to meet you. And I'm like, cool. And he's like, yeah, you got the base all set up? I go, yeah, I got the base all set up. He goes, great. I can set it up just a few minutes for you. Then I got you. And he's like, at this point, it's also like end of December in New York, but now he's in that bad combination of like, he's wearing like an outfit for someone who's outside in the freezing cold all day, but he's been straining so much. So now he's also like wiping sweat off his face, just like a wreck. And he comes in and he gets the tree in the stand. And my wife had a family friend who gave us a gift when Cal was born. She gave us this toy chest it's really nice. It's made of wood and she had his name carved into the side. So the guy's setting up the tree and it's still in the orange net and he's like struggling and you could tell he's like off his game now because the hallway was so strenuous and he's like, ugh. He's down on all fours and like turning the things at the bottom of the stand to get it to catch and it's just bumbling. And then he looks over at this toy chest and he just goes, who's Caleb? And I just kind of looked at him and instantly my dad buzzer went off in my head. Like he said it. I don't know how to explain it to you except to say that a different person said it. It wasn't the bumbling dude that said it. He just goes, who's Caleb? And I just kind of like looked at him and didn't answer because I instantly was like, that felt weird. And he goes, you have a son, Caleb, huh? And I go, yeah. Caleb's my son. And he goes, how old is he? And I go, he's not even a year yet. And he's, oh, beautiful man. And I clocked it. I was like, this is weird. And then he turns to me and he goes, I'll take this netting off for you if you got some scissors. And I go to my desk and the scissors aren't there. This is like a constant thing. Scissor placement is one of the things my wife and I have. Every couple has their things. Scissor placement is one where I go, I know that I always put the scissors back in this drawer, and then there's like 9 other drawers that my wife will tell me they're actually supposed to be in, and I thought they were on my desk, and I can't find the scissors. But what I do have in my life is I have a friend named Eli who I love to death, but he is a lovable dummy. He's one of these guys. He just likes being dumb. He's an intelligent person, but he's just enjoys just being a dummy, and he likes dumb stuff. Like he's my friend who we used to go on the road together and he'd like buy fireworks and set them off. And I'm like, we don't need to be buying fireworks in our 30s and setting them off while we're driving through the South. Like, you dummy. I love you, you dummy. Like, it's fun, but you're a dummy. And one thing that Eli had done a couple of years prior was he somehow found a thing where he bought like 30 knives, these like big 6-inch blades with these cheap plastic handles. And then to all our friends, he's like, what color do you want? I'm like, I don't need your weird knife. He's like, take the knife, man. I'm giving all my friends a knife. Bobby got the red knife. Eugene got the yellow knife. You want the blue knife? Take the blue knife. I'm like, why are you buying all your friends cheap pocket knives, you dummy? Like, where'd you find it? And I love this guy. I say that with love. So I couldn't find the scissors, but I go into my desk and I realized I kept this knife in my drawer to like open packages with. So I go, I can't find the scissors. Let me grab this thing. I walk across the room and I hand this knife to this guy, George. And when I put this knife in his hand, two things happened. One is he looked down at it with the demeanor of an alcoholic who has just had a shot placed in front of him. And I will never forget the words he said, which is he looked at the knife and he goes, "Hello, beautiful," to a knife. He says, "Hello, beautiful," to a knife.
Oh my God.
And again, he said it in a way where I'm telling you, you read stories about people who are like serial killers, if I'm being honest. You know, or you watch news footage where people go, this guy lived down the block from us and he had 3 women, you know, that guy in Cleveland, where people are like, we all just lived on the block with this guy. He was just like a quiet guy, but he just seemed like he worked hard. And then he's got 3 women chained up in his house. Like, and then you find out this guy is 2 different human beings. You know what I mean? Like, he was just, he would cut your lawn for you. He'd give you the shirt off his back. And then also he had a sex dungeon, you know, that he dug in the middle of the night. And that's where all those piles of dirt were, you know, like, and the guy just goes, "Hello, beautiful," in a way where I go, this is not the guy who was out in the hallway. Like, oh, I can't get it. It's stuck. It's like that guy was like the 4th stooge. I guess the 5th if you count Shemp, you know, but it was like a Keystone Cops routine in my fucking hallway. And now I hand this guy a knife and he goes, "Hello, beautiful." Like this moment where I just went, what did I just do? What did I just do? Yeah. So he's cutting through the netting and he's still not good. It's not like he all of a sudden has become this. He's not teaching a master class on how to set up a Christmas tree all of a sudden. Like he still isn't good at that. It's just a different tone. So he's trying to hack his way through the netting and it's taken forever. And then all of a sudden, and we're in a New York City apartment. So the crib is at the foot of our bed in our 1-bedroom apartment. And on the other side of that wall is our kitchen. And then it opens right up into the living room where I am with George. It's a New York City apartment. So think of it as the bedroom, the bathroom, and the room I'm in with this guy. And baby monitors set up on the kitchen counter. And George is kind of on the other side of that. So this baby monitor is directly between me and George. And all of a sudden, I just hear, I could not believe the timing. My son wakes up early from his nap. I just hear, and George turns and looks at me with this knife in his hand and goes, "Caleb's home?" And I just knew in my heart, in that moment, I just went, I might need to kill this fucking person. This person is putting me in a position where he might need to be dead. And I started feeling that. And I'm telling you that. And parent to parent, I'm telling you it in a way where I go, not a hyperbolic thought, not a histrionic thought, just the innate knowledge of like, I handed this guy a knife. When he touched the knife, he reacted like he had just sniffed cocaine for the first time in 10 years. And now he just looked at me and made note of the fact that my son's awake and he's looking me in the eye. And it just hit me. I might need to kill this person. This feels weird and I might need to kill this guy. And it's that weird thing that I think only parents understand where I'm going, I'm not being dramatic. I'll kill him. I'll kill this guy. And I go, "Yeah, he's awake. It sounds like," and he goes, "Are you going to go get him?" And I go, oh, you know what? He hasn't been napping that long, George. So I'm going to see if he puts himself back down. And we just kind of looked at each other while my son's crying on the monitor. And after felt like forever, but it's probably about a minute, he goes, I don't know if he's going to go back down. You should probably go get Caleb. And I'm sitting here and I'm going, I don't want to get my son right now. But then I'm also going, maybe some of it is the Catholic upbringing. You never want to offend anybody. Then there's also a part of me going, what's going to create more tension? And I'm sitting here in my head making snap decisions, but I'm going, in reality, if nothing was weird about this guy, I'd be getting my son right now. So let's do that, because I know that that's the normal thing to do. And he's going to see, maybe he's just a weird guy. So I go and I get my son, and he's doing the sleepy baby on my shoulder thing. And I come out and George says, oh, he's beautiful. Look at his blue eyes. Beautiful baby. You're beautiful, Caleb. And I'm going, thank you so much, George. And he's barely even bothering to cut away at that net with that knife. And I'm just looking at him. And we had, in the middle of my apartment, New York City apartments, you can't raise a baby in these apartments. I don't know how people do it. We have since moved back to my native land in New Jersey, but we had a big baby cage set up in the middle so we could plop him down and he could play. So I just put my son down in the middle of the baby cage, and I put my back to my son. I'm directly between my son and this man's view of my son. I just look at him. I go, hey, you know what, man? He's awake. I got to deal with him. So you got the thing almost all the way off. I'll finish taking the net off. And George then proceeds to make a choice where I will tell you, he ruined a piece of my childhood, and I think my son's childhood forever. This guy, and I wish I could do the voice, proceeds to look at my son and go, Caleb, do you like George? In a Donald Duck voice, like a nightmare Donald Duck voice. He starts going, Caleb, do you like Georgie? Oh, do you like George? And my son, who is a sweet boy, he can be a shy kid, but he wants to have a good time. He's a nice, sweet, well-intentioned boy. He really is. He goes, Caleb, do you like George? And my son bursts out crying quicker than he ever has after one sentence from another human being. I've never seen my son instinctively react more poorly to anyone than this knife-wielding Christmas tree delivery man who's decided he's going to impersonate Donald Duck. So I go, oh, he's just waking up, George. Don't take it personal. And he goes, I guess he doesn't like me. I don't know. Kids don't like me sometimes. I go, do you have kids? He goes, no, but the kids I meet, they don't like me. And I'm going, whoa, that's a scary thing to say. This is a scary thing to say. So he keeps doing the Donald Duck voice, and my son's just looking at him. And George walks up to the edge of the baby cage, and he's doing this Donald Duck voice with my son. And it hits a point where I can tell you, sincerely going, okay. He's now close enough to my son that I don't want to step over to the kitchen area to get a butcher knife. I guess he's got his shoulder towards me. I don't know which hand he has that knife in. I think if I start floating back now, he won't notice that I'm trying to get behind him. I guess I might just choke him to death. And I'm sitting here legitimately going, I think probably that's it. Yeah, I don't think I have time to get my own weapon, so I'll probably just try to fucking choke him to death. All in front of my young son, my not even a year-old son. This kid's 6, 7, 8 months old, maybe April to December. So I'm sitting here going, I could kill this guy. And it's really hitting a porch where George is going, wow, he really doesn't like me. Caleb really doesn't like me. And I finally just turn to him and I go, George, I got the tree. You're going to go now. And it was this moment where he could tell, I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe he's just a weird guy. Maybe he's just a weird guy who had a long day and he's tired from dropping off trees. Or maybe he was a guy who did, in fact, have these different personalities inside him and that I suck him. Maybe I was just a dad who hadn't slept in 6 months and was seeing more than there was. I don't know. But what I do know is when I said that, he turned and he looked at me and there was this beat where it really felt to me like I might as well have just said, like, I'm calling your bluff, dude. It's time to go or it's time to make your move. Like that was my tone. And he just looked at me. And he was like, you sure you don't want me to finish that net? And I go, no, I got the net, George. You're going to go now. And I tip him. I put the tip in his hand because I had the tip in my pocket because I had been told you got to tip out. So I knew. I go, I'm tipping this guy. That's when you leave. Nobody's sticking around after they get their tip. Not in New York City. People got other places to do. You got other trees to drop off, man. So I put the tip in his hand. I go, I got the net, George. It's time to go. And we have this like slow walk back to the front door. And it was like the most tense 10 seconds. I've never even really told my wife she came home later and saw how scared I was. I've never really told her how scared I was, though, because I'm still sitting there going, float like a step and a half behind this guy. Don't walk shoulder to shoulder, because if he makes a move, you want time to react. Like, I'm honestly thinking things like this. And we get to the front door and I open it and I go, thank you so much. And he goes, yeah, bye, man. Bye, Caleb. And he wasn't even 2 inches away from the door, and I slammed the door shut and I throw the deadbolt. And anybody who's been in a New York City apartment building knows, like, you hear the deadbolt, and I throw the deadbolt. And I tell you, I waited about 5 seconds of just like letting out a breath, going like, the fuck's going on? And then I looked through the peephole, and my door was right next to the elevator. And here's where I swear. There's two things that I will end the story on, where I will swear to you I wasn't wrong, and I almost had to kill a guy. I think I came a couple minutes away from either dying or killing a guy. I was on the 3rd floor. He had that granny cart with him. It took a minute for that elevator to get there. The elevator always waited at the bottom floor. I waited about 5 seconds. I looked through my peephole. He had taken off for the steps. He got out of there. He knew I sensed something was up with him, and he grabbed that thing and he ran. He didn't wait for the elevator. He got out of there too. And the other thing, I have searched my house high and low. I have moved since this story took place. I unpacked everything in that desk because we got rid of that desk. I boxed up the stuff I wanted to keep. I threw out everything. I have not seen that blue knife since I put it in that man's hand. And I have never been able to hear Donald Duck again. My son has some Mickey Mouse bath toys. I put the Donald Duck one away when we got it. He can play with Goofy and Pluto all he wants. Don't put the fucking... He can play with Daisy Duck too. Donald Duck is not going in the bath with you. And I tell you, I learned in that moment. It really was. I was like, I might kill and you might die, George.
Is that amazing, right? Oh my gosh. When he was using the Donald Duck voice, that was super creepy and, just so well told. All the pauses he took and the drama, the buildup and the tension, it was just terrific. So thank you, Chris Gethard. And our final story in our best of 2021 comes from comedian Jackie Martling. Most of you guys know him as Jackie the Joke Man, who was on Howard Stern for 15 years. And he has many, many comedy albums and also a couple of books out right now. One of the books is called Bow to Stern. And you guys should go back and listen to this episode of Storyworthy with Jackie Martling because bow to stern, I think means something a lot different than what Jackie told me it means. And the conversation is pretty interesting. So go back and listen to Storyworthy with me and Jackie Martling. But right now, listen to him talk about going to Las Vegas with the one and only Rodney Dangerfield.
Okay, so it's 1978, and I was playing the guitar in the band. Then I was playing guitar and telling jokes in the band. Then I'm playing guitar and telling jokes on my own. And then I got to where I was, instead of playing guitar and telling jokes, I decided I'm going to tell jokes and play the guitar. And I'm struggling to try and be a comedian with the other guys, the other local guys. It's a long story how we all wound up together. It's very fun. It's in my book, And but when you're scratching and clawing like that, like any kind of good news. You want any kind of good news. And my grandmother passed away, and I'm living in my grandmother's house with my girlfriend and my good friend Richie Minervini, the first comic I met, who's still a dear friend, used to come and stay with us sometimes so we wouldn't have to drive all the way home to Huntington. And he walked in one night, and he said, oh, what a night I had, man. I went to Dangerfield's, and I got on, And Rodney saw me and he thought I was really great. He said, "Kid, you're really good. Yeah, I'm going to try and use you on TV. You know, I'm going to do a lot of stuff for you." And he really loved me. And I'm immediately so jealous. I could bite my hand. I couldn't believe it. So I said, all right, I got an inside track. So I sat down with a carbon copy sticking in the typewriter, and every joke I could think of that I knew, that I told, anything that remotely might work, I typed into Rodney Dangerfield speak. You know what I mean? You know? And typed 6 pages. And I had recently had a friend call me up from Peru with a very, very, very funny joke that was included in these jokes that I typed out. And so a couple days later, Richie walks in. I've got the jokes. I put the carbon copy to the side. I fold up the 6 pages. I put them in an envelope and wrote Rodney Dangerfield. And Richie comes in and said, "Richie, you got to do me a favor. You got to give these to your friend Rodney Dangerfield." And he gets all sheepish. He says, "Oh, man." He's like, "I didn't meet Rodney. He wasn't even there. I didn't even get on stage that night." I'm like, "You motherfucker." And he goes, "But I really was there." And I swear to you, Christine, I swear on my mother, he took a matchbook out of his pocket. And there's Rodney Dangerfield, like this, 1118 First Avenue. He says, "This is proof I was there." And what am I going to do? I took the envelope with Rodney's name on it, wrote the address on it, and mailed it. There's nothing to lose. Now, my grandmother's dead. Everybody she knew was dead. Nobody knows her phone number. And I'm sitting there with my girlfriend 2 days later, and the phone rings. And I answer, "Hello? Hello." He said, "Who is this?" He says, "It's Rodney." I said, "Rodney who?" "I knew you were fucking funny. I could tell by these jokes. I know you're funny." And Lois is like, "Who is it?" I said, "It's fucking Rodney Dangerfield." She said, "No, who is it?" I said, "It's Rodney." "Yeah, there's some funny shit here. I really love this. Why don't you come to Westbury Music Fair and come backstage and we'll talk. I'll buy a couple of these jokes." And long story short, we show up at Westbury and we walk into his dressing room, and I've got a ponytail down the middle of my back and torn blue jeans. My girlfriend's 10 years younger. I'm like 28, 29, and she's like 19, and she's beautiful. And he's like, "Oh, she's beautiful. Look at you. The fucking blue jeans and the hair. What's with? Oh, she's pretty. You want a piece of fruit? Hey, how you doing? Yeah. Some jokes here. Funny fucking jokes. This 2-bagger joke. I love this. Hey, she's pretty. So he does his show, and the 2-bagger joke. I don't know if you know the joke. It's an old thing from forever ago, but I'm the one who got it to him. And he always said it was his favorite joke, and he could never be mad at me because, and it was a girl so ugly, she's known as a 2-bagger. As a girl is so ugly, you not only got to put a bag over her head, you got to put a bag over your own head in case her bag rips. And it brought the house down, and I'm like in heaven. So now I'm sending him jokes. And that's a whole long story and the Howard Stern battle, and it's in my book. That's not the point of the story. But I'm sending him jokes, and I'm always bugging him. "Come on, boss, take me with you. Take me on the road. Take me to Las Vegas. Take me somewhere. We'll have fun. We'll write some jokes. We'll break balls, blah, 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 blah." And after badgering him for like a couple of years, I mean, along the way, he didn't really buy anything more. He bought a couple jokes, but not much. And then he was using them without saying anything. But that was not due to anything subversive. He was a cokehead and a pothead and a drunk. He's not keeping track. He didn't give a fuck. So finally, he calls me up one day. And he says, "Hey, listen, I'm going to Vegas. You want to go to Vegas?" I'm like, "Do I want to go to Las Vegas?" "Yes, on me. You know what? I'm going to Vegas. I'm going to Lauderdale first with my kids. Yeah, come to Lauderdale. Come to Lauderdale. We'll go to Vegas. We'll have a nice 2 weeks." I'm like, wow. So I flew with his kids to Fort Lauderdale and rented a car and then went back and picked them up at the airport. The whole time it's like, pinch me. It's like, you got to be kidding. I mean, I'm picking him up on York Avenue and his kids are there and I'm loading the stuff into the car and I can't believe it, and he's like, "Yeah, make sure, blah, 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 yeah, lots of tips." I'm like, I said, "You do realize every time you open your mouth, I'm going to laugh." "Yeah, it's all right. Don't fucking worry. Don't worry." So we go to Lauderdale and there's so many details, but that's for another day. We leave Lauderdale. We go to Las Vegas. He's headlining at the Aladdin Hotel in Las Vegas. Paul Williams is on the bill. But Rodney's opening the show, even though he's a headliner. Yeah, the comedian goes, then the music. The comedian doesn't follow the music. It's showbiz, the comedian, then the music. So Paul Williams is absolutely thrilled that Rodney's sees that's the way to do it. And he winds up having us to his house. And we spent an afternoon with a pile of cocaine like I'd never seen in my life. And I think Paul got cleaned like 2 days after that. He's been clean for like 40 years. So we have the time of our life, and we're at the Aladdin. Now, this is Easter time of 1980. And I don't know how old you are, but there was a gas strike. There had been a gas strike in the early 70s, and this is 1980 in probably April. And it was a crazy gas strike. I mean, with, lines around the block and the whole, I mean, people weren't even going to the next town, let alone driving to Las Vegas. So Las Vegas is a ghost town. And his shows are like 1/3 full or something, but there's nobody in town. I had such a rude awakening because we get out and we get in the limo and we pull up to the Aladdin, and I'm with this superstar. He wasn't as well known as he was going to get because that was just when they started the Miller beer commercials. Mm-hmm. And he was in all the commercials with all the different sports stars. And as opposed to doing Dean Martin or Johnny Carson once every couple of months or once every couple of weeks, he was on TV every 5 seconds with Bubba Smith or Joe Namath or somebody. And it was like, and he was in every commercial, and they rotated. So everybody knows, like, look at this. Everybody fucking knows me. Hey, Rodney, I never had this. Like, look at this. I'm a superstar. So he's all excited, and it's unbelievable. So we pull up to the Aladdin, and he gets out of the car, and we walk in the hotel, and this was a slap in my face. The first thing he did was walk up to the ticket booth and said to the girl, how's sales? How we doing? I'm like, holy shit, it never ends. It never ends. How am I doing? Do we sell any tickets? You think at some point you're a big star. You just don't give a fuck. And there is no such thing. And that was like, holy Christ, this is how it's always going to be. It was crazy. So there's nobody in town. So it's like probably the first night or so. And he got done with 2 shows, and he goes, come on, let's get out of here. Let's take a walk. Let's go. And at the time, the MGM Grand was right next door to the Aladdin. This is before the MGM Grand burnt down a couple months later, literally. And we walk down, and it's chilly. It's Easter, and Las Vegas is hot in the day, but at night, Las Vegas is chilly. And we go to the MGM Grand, and it is a morgue. There's not even hookers. There's just the maitre d' is there, who Rodney's known for years and years and years. And the maitre d' kept calling Rodney Roger Danglefoot. And I mean, every time he said it, I laughed, and Rodney was getting madder and madder and madder. Like, sorry, that's fucking funny, right? So we're walking back to the Aladdin. It's next door, but in Las Vegas, between 2 major hotels, it's a long walk.
Right. And
in my memory, the sun's coming up. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but it was chilly. And we walk along Las Vegas Boulevard South. We're just about to the Aladdin. He says, you got to take a leak? And I said, well, of course, you know how much beer I drink. I could always piss. He says, come on. And instead of going into the Aladdin, into the lobby, into the bathroom like a couple of human beings, we walk behind the Aladdin where the dumpsters are. And the dumpsters are the size of a small McDonald's. They're huge dumpsters. And he walks over to this dumpster and takes it out and starts pissing on the dumpster. So what am I going to do? I'm over here. I take it out and I'm peeing on this dumpster. And we're standing there in the cold of Las Vegas taking a leak. And he turns to me and goes, welcome to the big time.
Wow.
I said, do you know how many times I'm going to tell that story? He says, have a fucking party. What do I care?
Yeah.
I've been telling that story for 40 years. I mean, that's so Rodney. That's so Damon Runyon, the big time, not welcome to show business or welcome to superstardom. Welcome to the big time.
Isn't that an amazing story? I feel like I could just see Rodney Dangerfield behind that dumpster. I could see everything Jackie was talking about. Just a terrific story. Thank you, Jackie Martling. I'm glad we've become friends. All right, you guys, thanks again for all of your support in 2021. I look forward to getting those of you that I don't know. I look forward to getting to know you in 2022. Storyworthy is alive and going strong on Podcast One, so let them know that you enjoy the show. And rate and review Storyworthy on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to Storyworthy. And don't forget to follow me on social media at Storyworthy and at Story Smash. And one more thing, head over to StoryworthyPodcast.com and join my mailing list. Hooray! All right, you guys, thanks again for listening. And on behalf of Mollie Heckerling, Chris Gethard, Steve Mason, and Jackie Martling, my name is Christine Blackburn saying Happy New Year and make it a story-worthy week.
Thanks for joining us on the Storyworthy Podcast. We'll be back next week with all new stories. Subscribe to Storyworthy on iTunes and visit the Storyworthy website at storyworthypodcast.com.
You made it. Here. Finally. Checked out of office to check into the sweet views of that place you've always wanted to go. You know the one. It's nice. Even the kids like it.
This place is so cool.
And they never like it.
Mom, can we go to the pool?
Look at that. Not even asking for the Wi-Fi. When you're with Amex, it's not if it's going to happen, but when. American Express. Don't live life without it.
New message.
Hey, man, it's Devin. You know, from that time you accidentally emailed me because you thought I was a different Devin. Oh, and your email signature said confidential. If you receive this in error, please delete. That's so you. Anyway, I heard you bought a boat. When are we setting sail, Captain?
When you get a boat, you also get new friends. Make sure Progressive's one of them and get coverage today for as little as $100 a year.
Oh, and no, you did not receive this message in error.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Annual premium for basic liability policy not available in all states.